From New York, Mr. Torres is now recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Gensler, there are areas on which we do see eye to eye, like the need to disclose climate change risk or the need to understand the immense implications of the unfolding AI revolution. But I'm going to offer, however, observations about 3 areas about which I've heard concern and then have you respond as you see fit. First, on the subject of crypto. The lesson learned from the collapse of FTX is that companies that bear the characteristics of FTX, offshore, deregulated, over-leveraged companies, have the greatest risk of losing customer funds. In a world of scarce enforcement resources, one would think that the SEC would prioritize enforcement actions against high-risk companies that resemble FTX, offshore, deregulated, over-leveraged companies. Instead, it appears the SEC has done the opposite. Instead of targeting an offshore, deregulated exchange like Binance, you've chosen to target an onshore regulated exchange like Coinbase. Instead of targeting an offshore deregulated stablecoin issuer like Tether, you've chosen to target an onshore regulated stablecoin issuer like Paxos. It seems like your enforcement priorities ignore the lessons learned from the FTX failure. Second, on the subject of equity market structure, if a broker sends a retail order to an exchange, the broker would be in compliance with your proposed rule. But if the broker sends the retail order flow to an off-exchange wholesaler, the broker would be out of compliance with your proposed rule, even if the wholesaler is offering a better price than the exchange. And therein lies what seems to be the perversity of the proposed rule. It strikes me as perverse to tell a broker that you cannot send retail order flow to the wholesaler who is offering a better price and therefore a better execution. On the third subject of private funds, both New York State and New York City retirement systems are heavily invested in private funds. The New York State Common Retirement Fund invested about $29.5 billion in PE, and over the course of 10 years saw an annualized return of 10.12%. The New York State Teachers Retirement System invested $14.7 billion, and over the same period saw 16.6% in annualized returns. The New York City Employees Retirement System invested $6.5 billion, and over the course of 10 years saw an annualized return of 15%. So when I see returns as high as 16.6%, which seem impressive, there's a question that comes to mind: does the SEC risk fixing what ain't broken? So those are 3 observations, and you're free to respond.
I thank you, and let me try to do them in kind. In terms of crypto, you're right that U.S. investors are accessing the crypto markets, both onshore companies and offshore. Our jurisdictional reach is to both if they're U.S. investors that are participating in that.
But let's be clear, you have the authority to take enforcement action against offshore deregulated exchanges.
We do.
Stablecoin issuers.
It takes longer to build the investigative files. It takes longer, sometimes in cooperation with offshore enforcement authorities to pursue that. And it is, frankly, more challenging to actually get subpoenas complied with. And so it takes longer in time. In terms of your second area about the efficiency in the capital markets, one area is these individual investors and individual investors placing, as you described, these market orders. And what we did was put out a proposal and said, if that proposal is getting at least the middle of the market, at least mid-part or better, it's fine. But if these individual small dollar orders were not doing that, either they're sent to a regulated exchange or put it into competition. But we're going to get feedback on it. And it's one of the 4 rules we put out. It might be the one that I think we've gotten 5,000 plus comments on already.
I guess maybe I'm missing something, because you hold the exchange as the gold standard of competition. But if the wholesaler is offering price improvement relative to the exchange, like, I'm failing to see something.
So one of the things is...
Like, if the wholesaler were offering a worse price, then I would consider that a failure of competition, and I would see the reason for your rule. But if it's offering a better price, are we fixing what ain't broken?
Well, so we don't have a level playing field right now between the dark markets that are probably a third to a half of the market on any given day and the
But what you
lit
denounce
markets.
as the dark markets are outperforming what you consider the gold standard.
Well,
So that's where I'm confused.
so I'm saying that the dark markets actually have different rules of the road. They don't have the same minimum increment.
I could speak to you for an hour, but
So
I'm,
we're trying to harmonize that. On your last,